Hey everyone, today we're going to be doing a tutorial on how to draw Son Goku from Dragon Ball. Now I would like to preface this tutorial by saying there are literally hundreds of ways you could draw this character accurately, from different artist styles to proportions to features placed. Like, there are so many ways you could do this and have it look correct. So this is more so going to be my interpretation of the character. If you like the look of that, great. If you don't, great. You can replace the features, the proportions, the placement, however you would like, to fit your own style or make your own Goku. And I would also like to preface by saying this is more so an intermediate tutorial, so I'm assuming that you already have some experience drawing. This will be very observational based, so you're going to see what I do. I'm going to give you some explanation, and you're going to apply that to your own work to create your own piece, and I hope that this video can do just that. Alright, so the very first thing I've done, and I don't do this with my drawings when I actually draw, mostly because I've done this so many times that I don't really need to, but I've created this template, or more so a guideline, for where I'm going to draw some of the features on the face and the head shape in general. So you'll notice I have a sphere, and then a line for the center line, and then you'll see like half an ellipse, and then I have a line that curves slightly, for where the eyes will be placed. And as I said earlier, this is very observational based. You kind of have to eyeball it. You have to look at existing pictures of characters that are already drawn and finished and kind of see where they're placed, and then create a rough estimate to where something looks good to you, and then you'll form your own ideas based on that. So when I draw, the first thing I start with would be some of the features on the face. Sometimes I'll start with the jaw. It really just depends on what I'm doing, or where I'm at, what angle I'm drawing in, etc. So for this sketch in particular, I'm just gonna draw from the eyes. I'm gonna start with the eyes and work my way down and work for the features around the face, just because I already had the head shape, so I've done most of the work already. So as you can see here, I've quickly sketched out the rough shape of an eye. If I wanted to break it down for you, you could in terms say that you're drawing a morphed rectangle for the eyebrow, and then 3 simple lines for the eye. And then the iris itself is just like a half an oval. Depends on what style you're going for. Some people do half a circle. So it really just depends on what you want to draw. But as you can see here, if I really want to break it down to basic shapes, an elongated misshapen rectangle, as well as the 3 lines for the bottom of the eye, and then the half an oval for the eye. And then you kind of, like I said, it's observational, so you really just have to eyeball it, see what you come up with. If you want to try redrawing it several times till you get a shape that you really like, you can try that as well. Like I said, I've drawn this character so many times and characters like him so many times that I don't really have to keep redrawing shapes anymore, but I did used to have to do that until I found stuff I'd like. But now, since I have my own style for this, I don't really have to rely on that. So for you, if you're just starting, maybe that'll be a method you could try. If not, just try eyeballing what I've done and making it your own. Now for the next part, to save time for the tutorial, I'm going to just mirror the eye I've already drawn. If you would like a different expression, like a brow raise or something like that, you can always redraw it. If you're drawing traditionally, obviously you'll have to redraw it. But for me, since I'm just saving time cutting corners, I'm just going to mirror it, flip it, and then put it in an accurate position to where the face kind of still looks symmetrical, but it doesn't also look weird. You'll notice sometimes if you mirror things when you're drawing, it'll like look off or just misshapen. So to avoid all of that, you just gotta kind of eyeball and move things around as you go. So I think right about here looks good. I think it's slightly turned too much, and I just place it down, and I'm gonna merge this to the layer beneath it, and later on, if I need to move any of these features, I can do that all at once. I won't really have to like struggle to get one thing moved. Then I got to go back and like find which layer something was on. So it's really seamless. All right, so the next feature I'm going to work on is the nose, and the nose is pretty simple. Yeah, if you look at the form of an actual skull, you'll notice that you kind of have an emptiness for where the eye sockets are. Now, keep in mind that this is anime. All the features are going to be exaggerated anyways, but it still does have a realistic aspect to it. So we have our eye sockets. And from these sockets, the bridge of the nose is formed. So this will give me a good idea of where I can place these features, and then you have where the cartilage would be. But for in this instance, we're drawing the skull. I just want to emphasize that this part, this bridge, will really give you an idea of where things will flow from. So if I go ahead and take this out, I now know where I can start the nose. And the nose is another feature that it really just depends on how you want it to look. However you want the nose to look, go for that result. If you don't like, for instance, if you don't like this shape, which is very common in modern Dragon Ball, a lot of people will say that it kind of looks like as if they have like an empty black hole on their nose, which is I can see what they're getting at. If you want to draw some like a bean shape almost, with some definition on the side, you can do that as well. Or if you even just want to draw just the bottom of the nose to define where the shadow is, you could do that as well. You don't even have to put an outline on where the bridge would be. So like I said, it really just depends on what are you going for, what do you want it to look like, and then just merge these features together to come up with a result that suits you. And don't ever be afraid to move things around, because a lot of things you'll do when drawing, you may not like the first time around. So as you can see, I've already rotated the nose and enlarged it. I didn't like how small it looked right off the bat. So like I said, it really just depends on your preference. So for this Goku in particular, I kind of want him to be smirking a little bit. So I'll draw some definition. And for the mouth, as you can see, it's kind of a trapezoid almost, because he's smirking, but without the bottom. So if I were to completely rotate it, you can see that I formed the top of a trapezoid if I were to draw a line underneath. So if you can find shapes in life and kind of use those as reference for the shapes that you'll draw on the paper, or if you're drawing digitally on the canvas, then you can kind of use those to illustrate like a rough estimate for what these should look like. So in my head, I've already got his lips completely formed out, you know. So this looks like a character like Frieza's lips, for example, are very detailed, so they look like this. But in my head, I also imagine this without having to draw it. I see this in a 3D plane. And if you imagine stuff like that, a lot of these forms will just come together for you. Look at things in real life, like look at your own lips or look at your own nose and see how those kind of leave a 2D plane, and try to replicate that on a canvas just like this. So now I can kind of see that these have like a 3D aspect to it. Despite none of those lines being there, with shading, I can identify those and kind of bring it to life. So I'm just going to move all of these features down. I want the mouth to kind of rest along where the jaw line is, or where it meets right here. If you can see that. I want the nose line to rest there. And I also just think that where these features are right now, these fit the best for what I'm going for. And then from here, it's pretty much just plug and play. What are you going for? So I kind of want to have like a head that follows the guide of the face. So I'm just gonna draw around the guideline I already made, and I might leave a template to this like guideline thing I created. If you don't feel like making it and you just want to use something on the fly, then you can just use what I already have. But I do recommend you experiment making it yourself, because that is a big portion of getting the drawing correct and being able to do this without reference. Are these guidelines before I draw anything else? Are these correct? Is this going to look good before I have the eyes down, the nose down? And if it doesn't, go back to the drawing board. Just keep going at it until you can get it down without having to look at anything. Because what reference really is your brain. What drawing without reference, sorry, really is that your brain is combining everything you've ever seen. Every drawing you've ever made, every frame you've ever seen. You're creating this own concept of something you haven't seen before, but something other people haven't seen. So for example, I feel like I've drawn this picture of Goku before, despite it looking different than the other ones, because I'm taking things I've drawn and mashing it with other things I've drawn or seen to create a new concept, almost like I'm taking two different puzzles and changing pieces out to create a new puzzle that looks completely different than the two puzzles I took from. So that's kind of what reference is, because you can't really create something that hasn't been seen before. That's not how the human brain works. You can take many concepts and merge them together to create something that most people haven't seen before, but in a sense, everything has been done, or you wouldn't be able to really create it. So next, I'm just gonna start drawing the ears, and these should really just go somewhere around here if you want to make them larger. People in Dragon Ball have very large ears, so Goku in particular, I think his ears are quite large. So this shape can be broken down like this. You have the lobe underneath, and it kind of comes up to the ear canal and meets the side of the head. So you can kind of see that. And then for this, you just mimic it on the other side. Go about where it was, and just draw the same shape. So his lobe ends about right here on the other side. So I'm going to mimic it. And now you can kind of start seeing the form come together, and it really starts looking like the character after you start adding all of these features. Okay, so next I've gotten most of the features down. I don't have the details inside the ear or the hairline yet, but I'm going to get to those. But firstly, I'm going to go ahead and draw the neck. And as I keep saying, with every single feature, there's so many ways you can draw it. Like I could start doing this. I could bring it out, which is massive, but I mean, it happens in Dragon Ball. So there's so many ways to draw it. You kind of just have to remember what you've watched, or maybe specific frames you liked, or you have an artist that you admire. If you like what they're doing, try to mimic that. For example, I draw the neck starting from where the lobe and the side of the head meet. I like putting the neck there, so I'll do something like this, and I'll just mimic that on the other side. And if you don't like that, maybe you want it to be somewhere like right here, you can do that as well. It really just, like, younger characters in Dragon Ball will have that appearance. So it really just depends on what you prefer. It's your preference. Not that maybe this way is incorrect or that this way is incorrect. It just whatever you prefer. All right, and if I'm going to give you a rough estimate of where the traps should go and where they should be placed, I would say somewhere around the chin level, so somewhere around here, and just play with shapes. If you like the way something looks, keep it. If you don't, scrap it. Keep redrawing it. So this is kind of how I draw mine. They kind of do this, but they're not as intense as that. But you can kind of see the line that I've drawn here. And excuse any of my messy work. I'm drawing on a screenless pad, so I have to look at the monitor. My hand is down at the table. I can't really see exactly what's going on. So you'll see me frequently have to redraw lines, or I draw off a path. I can't really do much about it. I have to stick with what I got. So. All right, and then next we have the hair, and this is yet another feature that is just, there's so many ways you can draw it. Some people put 4 to 5 like spikes on the side of the head. Some people put 3. So it really just depends on what you want to draw. So for this one in particular, I think I'm gonna do 3. Just because I don't really feel like adding a bunch, because I kind of like the less detailed Gokus, especially after Dragon Ball Super Broly, and the character designer Shintani. A lot of his designs were far more simple than anything we'd saw in modern Dragon Ball, or had seen in modern Dragon Ball. So, and they're simplistic, man. They're really easy to draw. So I've just been sticking with those for the past few like front shot Goku drawings. Yeah. And then Goku has this like curvature. It's almost like if you were drawing a character with like a buzz cut, a portion of his head is like completely rounded, and that's gonna kind of follow the head shape as well. So you can see they're not necessarily parallel to each other, because at some point they're eventually gonna intersect. So be weary of that, but do pay attention to what's going on. So you can kind of see that if, let's say, the lines were to end here, they would never cross. So keep that general shape, and then you can just connect this over. And all of these kind of just make the same shape. They're just in a different way. I would say that if you want a stern way to draw this and never mess it up, this is the smallest one, this is the second smallest one, and this is the largest one. So you have small, medium, large. So small, medium, large. It looks like a fighting game lingo to him. So yeah, just pay attention to that. As long as you keep these general shapes, you'll be on your way. And I actually want to touch on something that I think, depending on what you're drawing for Goku specifically, this might help you. So I'm going to create a circle, and I'm going to draw like a general head shape real quick. Give me one moment. So if you've got this circle and you've got your head shape, you can kind of use this as a guideline to really form his hair in a correct way that will leave you with results that are easy to obtain and look decent as well. So if you're not capable of coming up with a hair shape on your own, which you may not be able to do on your first or second try, but after a while, all these things just become natural, like reading a book. Even if you haven't read a book or read anything in years, or rode a bike for that matter in years, you can probably still do it. So you can see that I've kind of followed this circle I've put around the head. I imagine that circle on my actual drawing without it even being there. And the same thing could be said for, like, let's say this guideline. See, I drew this entire head shape without having to do a sphere or a circle, the center line or anything. I formed all of that without having to look at it. And you can do that as well with practice. And most of this could be done with practice. Like, I don't have to look at anything anymore. I've just drawn it enough to know what it looks like without having to see it. Okay, and then for this side, as you can see, I did with the small little tip. I prefer to draw 4. You can draw 5. You could even draw 6 if you want to get crazy with it. But generally speaking, as you can see here, these two are relatively the same size. This one's the smallest one, and this is the medium one. So you have 2 larges, one medium, one small. So one extra bang. So let's just say if you wanted to add this here and then this, now you have one medium. No, sorry. Yeah, one medium, one small, and 2 larges. These two would be the same size. Obviously, they wouldn't make that shape, but you can kind of see what I mean. All right, so for this side, you're going to start, you can kind of see where I've started from a little bit beneath the neck, because the hairline is going to make this shape behind the neck, like it would in real life. So you're going to start from behind the neck a little bit, underneath the earlobe, and just bring it out. And like I said, you can make any shape you'd like. It doesn't have to be a specific shape every time. Hair flows. Hair is not a stiff object. At times in Dragon Ball, it almost feels like it is, but shapes don't always have to be consistent. The way your hair works, like if let's say you move your hair frequently, without touching it for a couple of hours, it's going to look completely different if you're someone who like specifically adjusts it. So and the same could be said with Goku. If you want to draw this a little thinner, you can do that. If you want to draw it a little larger or longer, you can do that as well. So I'm just going to finish up these shapes real quick. All right, so I'm comfortable with where this is at. I don't really care I don't want to get it too specific about it. As long as it generally looks like what I'm drawing, then I'm fine with that. It doesn't bother me that much. So I'm going to lower the opacity on all of these layers real quick. Actually, I'm going to completely overexpose these 2 layers. All right, and I'm going to lower the opacity. I no longer need the guidelines, so I'm going to turn those off. The head shape is there, all the features replaced. The guideline is not very useful anymore at this point. I'm just going to draw the hair strands. So as I said earlier, the hairline was kind of not pointless, but not effective for anything other than, well, where can I start the hair? And this is another thing. Draw this however you'd like. Like, some people do like 6 front strands, some people do 4, some people do like 5. It really just depends on what you're going for. What do you want it to look like? So me, I change it up every time. I don't think I ever stick to something consistent. So for this one, for example, I'm gonna do this. So I have 3 on this side, and then bring this over here. So I drew 6 total. If I want to take that out and draw 5, I can do that as well. It really just depends on, well, what do you want? I kind of want these to be larger than they are, and I might take out that that leftover strand on the other side, shrink this down a bit. This one over here on the left, maybe 5 is too much. So see, now I'm doing 4. So I'm just playing around, coming up with shapes, and I like how this looks, so I'm going to keep it. For this drawing in particular. And he's pretty much done. I don't really have anything I'm missing. If I flip it, it should still look somewhat consistent. There are a couple things I can tell that are off just by flipping it. So I think these features are rotated too far up, and it's something I do frequently, accidentally, not on purpose. It's not intentional, it just happens. And then this side of the cheek over here is, or actually, let me do this. Just rotate the whole thing, because I think the guideline is fine. It's just I had messed up when drawing and it wasn't straight, but now it's fixed. And then since it's just a shoulder up shot, I mean, I'm going to draw the gi. If you don't want to, he's shirtless or something, you could do that as well. You would see a tad bit of these pecs, and if you don't want to draw pecs and you just want to draw a collarbone, you can do that as well. Like I said, it's another thing that's just based on preference. And you can even throw some hair strands out and about if you'd like. He does have a couple of those because his hair is very unkept. So I'm just going to do that just because I like these shapes. And then I'm going to merge all of this just because I can see everything. I don't really need to keep it on different layers. And then I'm going to go ahead and just go over everything with line art. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and detail the ear real quick for you guys. So the ear is another feature that is just, you draw it how you want. So the way I draw it is I kind of draw some of the details of the cartilage, and then I come down here for the lobe, and I spike it up, draw a line down, close it off, and then I'm done. It's that simple, and you just replicate it for the other side. Now that I have the ear detail on the right down, I'm going to go ahead and do it on the left, and then I'm going to come back in, do line art for the entire piece. I'm just going to go over what I have with black, and then we'll move on to color. For the line work, I might pause a couple points, tell you a little bit about how line width works, but it's pretty self-explanatory. You already have the sketch, just kind of going over what you've got. So a mistake I had made during the sketch, which, like I said, like, people aren't perfect, we all make mistakes. So something I had made a mistake on was that I actually closed the lines off on Goku's eyes. And when he's in base form normally, or typically, he is drawn with open eyes, unless he's got a serious face going on. So I just remembered that while I was drawing, I was like, well, Goku's eyes aren't closed off. So what I mean by that are these lines don't connect. There's no line there. You just draw the white center. So that is something I made a mistake on. But if you do like that, you could keep that as well. I mean, it doesn't look incorrect. It's just he's typically not drawn that way. So based on that, I'm just going to leave them open. Here, I'm just going to draw in some details from Dragon Ball. So they typically have these little lines under their cheeks. Some people call them whiskers. They're obviously not whiskers, but they're just cheek lines. And above the eye, you can draw a little bit of detail for the brow bone, if you'd like. So I'm going to, but if you don't like it, you don't have to draw it. All right, so I've added a color wheel so you can kind of see the colors I'm picking as I go. So right now I'm in an orangey, in between yellow and red for an orange. But I want it to be kind of a peachy because Goku's got pink tinted skin. Some characters have the tan skin, like an olive tan to it. But Goku, he should in most iterations have some pink tint to it. So that's what we're gonna do. So I've kind of decided on this color. You can pick your own colors, as you can see on my color wheel. If you want to try to replicate that, you can do that as well. And we're just gonna go in and we're just gonna fill. All right, we have his skin tone down. For his hair, I'm not gonna really do any shading. I'm not gonna mess with it, so I can just make it black. So next we're gonna we're gonna pick the color for his gi. I kind of want like a desaturated orangey, so I'm gonna go for something like this, but I think that that's too desaturated. Let me try to go something more orange. Okay, I'm fine with this. This looks fine. And then I'm going to do a blue as well. For this, you can kind of just go into your blues, mess around for the gi color. I'm okay with how this looks. It doesn't look too bad. I'm gonna color correct over it anyways. Where we're at now is fine. So all I have left to do is just fill in where the eyes go. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. And this is pretty simple. If you pull up the sketch over it, you're just gonna draw the white where I filled in the lines. Do you see that? Like, imagine the line being there, but it's not there. if that makes sense. So if you need to throw the sketch over it to find out where it is, you can do that. If you don't, that's fine too. I don't really need to, so I'm just gonna turn it off, and you can kind of just watch, try to replicate maybe what I'm doing. So this is essentially how you would draw just Goku. Now I'm gonna go ahead and add a background, do some filtering, because you can see that to save myself some time, I used vector layers for the line art. So I wanted to keep it as pixely as possible, despite there being no pixels in vector work. So that when I filled colors, I didn't have these this anti-aliasing on the brush, causing this like gray pixel bridge around every line art, every piece of line art, sorry. But now I can fix all that in post. I don't know, it just saves you a ton of time in advance. So that's going to be the end of the tutorial. If you found it helpful, go ahead and drop a like and leave a comment. Tell me some things you liked about it, maybe some tips that helped you out, maybe something you were stuck on. And if you didn't like the video, you can dislike it, and feel free to leave a comment. Tell me some things that you would have appreciated I went through. Maybe I skipped something you wanted to see, or I didn't go in detail enough on something. I'm always open to criticism. I appreciate you guys. Thank you for watching, and subscribe for some more tutorials. I don't know, some speed drawing tutorial stuff. See ya.